I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska, as well as the offices in Sydney, Australia. This is Gallup's Called to Coach. It's recorded on January 8th, 2019. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this webcast and you happen to be listening live, love to have you log into our chat room, bottom left-hand corner. It just says log in. Choose that. Choose the guest account. Put your name in where it says guest. Take those numbers out. Hit submit, and you are in the chat room. We'd love to have your feedback. If you have questions after the program, you can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, and we'll get back to you usually about 24 hours. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. For all your CliftonStrengths coaching resources and training needs, you can also catch the video and both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. We call that podcasting. It's available for you on our coaches blog. Just go to coaching.gallup.com. And Lingenfelter is our host today. She works as a learning solutions consultant with Gallup out of our Sydney, Australia office. And it's great to have you on Call to Coach. And welcome to the first Call to Coach of 2019. Happy New Year.
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. It's already a great year. So it started off on, at least in Australia, on a very good note. So yeah, thanks for that, Jim. My guest today is Elaine Krek, and Elaine is the founder of Prism Performance, which is an independent consulting organization here in Sydney. Before she founded Prism, she worked in the healthcare industry for over 25 years. So, and interestingly, she was working in sales and marketing leadership roles. So she's going to bring a different perspective to today's conversation than I think that everyone will appreciate. She was working for Pfizer for the last 15 years prior to starting her own business. And before that, let me see if I can get this right, Elaine. It was Beringa Ingelheim. I hope that's close.
Perfect. That's great.
Fantastic. So Elaine now works with individuals, leaders, and teams across all industries, not just the healthcare industry, to help make them dangerous, is what she says, dangerous in what they do every day. Now, Elaine says that is what sets you and your team ahead of the rest and makes your customers, clients, and competitors take notice. So I'm interested to hear what being dangerous means. A usual week for Elaine includes delivering training programs, workshops, conference facilitation, and delivering keynotes to corporate groups. She is, in fact, a Gallup certified strengths coach, and she calls herself a Gallup strengths nut. And she embraces imperfect but talented people. So, Elaine, welcome to Called to Coach.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Jim. And Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year to you. And if you don't mind starting off by letting our audience know what your top 5 are, they're most certainly going to want to know that.
Sure. So my top 5 are woo, communication, activator, positivity, and maximizer.
Very good.
Right.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
And hey, wait a minute, I got to jump in. We share like the first 6. We're 5 of 6. We're like clones. Elaine.
Seriously.
You know that? Yeah. So for me, a ranger, woo, maximizer, communication, activator, then positivity is 6. So I'm going to be listening very carefully to what you say, because you're super close.
Perfect.
Wow.
Sorry, and the other thing is, on that note, Claire from the Sydney office and I share 4 out of 5 in our top 5. So there's a lot of synergies there.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. That's fantastic. Well, we've wanted to get you on the show for a while. You and I have talked about it when we crossed paths, haven't we? And so how many years now has it been since you started Prism Performance? Because I know you've been doing so much in your business, but initially, when you first started, you said, hey, I've got heaps of experience from the healthcare industry and pharmaceutical sales and all of that, but I want to get some more experience under my belt before I come on the show. How many years has it been now, Elaine?
Yeah, so in a blink of an eye, I'm into my 4th year of operation.
Wow.
So I talk to buddies in the pharmaceutical industry and they go, what? They say things like, oh, it takes a couple of years to get started. And I go, yeah, it's year 4 now. So I've actually, embarking on year 4, which is really exciting.
Yeah, fantastic, and congratulations. I love seeing coaches that make that shift, and I definitely want to talk about that shift from being working for a big corporation and then and making the plunge to start your own business and do it successfully as you have. I want to step back though, for the sake of the people who are listening to this, because you have. Um, Such great experience in the healthcare industry. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what some of the common problems are that you experienced when you were working in healthcare and in the especially most specifically for pharmaceutical companies, and then also the issues that you see now that you're coaching people in that industry and others as well. But specifically, let's focus first on that bit of your experience.
Sure, sure. So as you've said, I spent 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry in various roles across different product therapeutic areas and with different customers, GP specialists, pharmacists. So I've seen a lot of the sales and marketing side of the pharma business, and within that role also I had a lot to do with sharing cross-functionally with other departments within our businesses. So it's a big eye-opener when you're looking at a company from a holistic view, because the main thing in pharmaceuticals is to bring life-saving or health initiating products to the market for patients. And there are a number of different departments within each company that have their own role and function. And it's a bit like any company. It doesn't have to just be pharmaceuticals. You have your commercial, your R&D, you have your patient access, there's legal, there's business technology. So all these large corporate companies have all these different business areas that have all got their own function, but at the end of the day, we all have to work together to coordinate to bring products to market. It's as simple as that. So for me, in my role in sales and marketing, it was about creating the best possible product for the patient, in the sense of how do we take it to the customer and how do we sell it to the customer, and how do we make it that the customer needs this for their patient and for them as a healthcare professional. So that's the first thing. And I think whereas the other departments were doing their own thing as well. So how do we then rely on each other? We need to influence without authority. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I had in that situation of being in those sort of marketing and sales leaderships. It's influence without authority. How do we come together? How do we work together and work towards a common outcome when we're potentially not always working together on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
So that was the first challenge.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I would imagine that because you spent so much time in sales and marketing, now that you're in your position at Prism Performance and you're going out into different organizations, are you focusing a lot on sales and marketing teams? I mean, from your own experience, so that you would have exactly how those folks are feeling and what they need and what their challenges are. And now you're wearing more of a HR hat, right? So do you find yourself sort of giving your clients what you wish you would have had?
Yeah, it's funny that you say you're sort of wearing an HR hat, because I don't feel that I am, in the sense that I know that the whole strengths-based philosophy comes from that HR background. But for me, that sales and marketing experience, it's about the outcome, it's about action planning, and it's about how we can actually make the day-to-day operations easier in terms of what we're good at. So yeah, it's an interesting one from that perspective.
Yeah. So, if you back up and you think about the different organizations that you've worked for in the pharmaceutical industry specifically, do you think there's some unique challenges there that you see uh, and that you address in your work
Yeah,
now? Can
yeah.
you talk about that?
One of the biggest things is change. And the pharmaceutical industry has been through a lot of change. I think in my last 5 years of sales leadership in Pfizer, we had to downsize every year. I had to let go of people every year. And in my last year, I had to exit a whole team of 50 individuals and managers, including myself. So it was a tough gig, and it's a tough gig not only for the colleagues but for the leaders as well. And so change is inevitable. It keeps happening. It keeps evolving. And we hear mergers, acquisitions, takeovers. And that means that there's less jobs with more people. So people are going to be making a change. They might exit a corporation. They might change to another business unit. They might look for another role elsewhere. So there's a lot of change that occurs. That's one. And I find that when teams are merging and coming together and changing up all the time, for a leader, I always say that a strengths program will take 6 months off your getting to know your people. It saves you 6 months of leadership, of getting to know who your people are and how they work. And so for a new leader coming together with a new team, for example, with a merge or potentially with a change in structure, that's a really great shortcut to getting it right.
Okay.
So there's that. And then there's also the fact that we have a lot of pricing competition. There's a lot. The area of pharmaceuticals that I worked in was the area that products were coming off patent, and so the challenge I found was we had to do more with less. And how do we come to market as a sales team or as a marketing team and bring products to our customers in a way that differentiated us from the competitors? Because we were talking about products that have been on the market for numbers of years and the customers know them. So it's about thinking differently and also being dangerous. And that I talk about being dangerous in my business now, in the sense of, pick one thing that will make you stand out, or pick one thing that will make you dangerous. And there's a great video from our beautiful Roger Federer. I can't wait to see him here next week. And he talks about that, you can work on your weakness on your backhand or your weak tennis stroke, and it'll make you an all-round good player, but it won't make you dangerous. So from that perspective, making people understand, well, what's the one thing that you can take that's different, that you're good at, that will make you dangerous in compared to your competitors.
Interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about that? So I get it in a Roger Federer environment. I get it in athletics, and I get it in certain circles. But if you're talking to folks, in corporate jobs, and you're talking to them about being dangerous, how do you do that there? Like what is that? How do you approach that and bring them on board with that?
Yeah, I think it's about picking. I always get, when I talk about with my strengths community or my participants about figuring out how they can be dangerous, I get them to think about which strength do they love? Which is the strength that they actually really resonate with? And then I go, okay, well, how are you using that strength to be better in your role? Okay, what are you doing with that right now? But then how can you dial that up even more? And what can it look like in an actual, competency, for example, or in an actual action item that you can do every week that you haven't done previously? So it's actually getting people to think about something they haven't already done before and trying something different moving forward.
And how do they respond to that language? Do they love it? Is it fun for them? Is it just a different way to look at it? How are your clients responding to being dangerous?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a scary word, right? So it's one of those things that I always introduce it into my strengths programs, and it's not something that is the overarching theme, but we have a lot of different things that come in there. We have our personal testimonials, our balcony and basements, blind spots, brilliant spot, moments of brilliance. And this is just another thing, what makes you dangerous in comparison to your competitors.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm keen to hear more about some of the work that you're doing at Prism Performance, but let's take a step back and talk about how you got here. So what was the process that happened and the thought process, Elaine, when you thought, I'm going to leave business here. I'm going to leave Pfizer. I'm going to leave corporate life and start my own business. And how did when did strengths come into that
Yeah.
process
So
as well?
I was really fortunate that HR introduced strengths about 3 years prior to leaving. It was around 2012 maybe. We had HR do a session with the people leaders, and we did a 2-hour workshop on strengths. And it was great. I found out my top 5. I went out there, me, positivity. I'm ready to do this. Let's make this happen. I took it out to my leadership team, and we dibbled and dabbled in it. Okay, we looked at it and we went, yeah, this is what your strengths are. This is what the map looks like. And it was great. I really put myself out there um, from a networking perspective. I went on some leadership courses. I went some networking events, and I saw a lot of people facilitating these. And I thought about it, and I thought, hang on a second here. This is something I would love to do. I'm not shy. You know that. I love working with people. And so I thought, hey, this could be a possibility, but what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? And then I remembered the strengths framework, and I've been using that quite a bit with my management team, in the sense, just a little bit, not a lot. And hence then when I was made redundant, I think I had a week off, and then I jumped into the offices at Gallup and did my accreditation. And then that was in December 2015. And with my pure activator talent, I was launched by Feb 1 with a website and a company and everything ready to rock and roll.
100%. I remember that so clearly. I remember when you took the certification, and I remember I couldn't believe how quickly you came back with your Prism Performance business card with the snowflake on it. And I thought, wow, there is the activator. I mean, just jumping in the maximizer and all of those, right? Coming right full force, and 100%. It was true to your nature there. So and yeah, that's just fantastic, and I loved it.
There's our little snowflake logo you were talking about.
Yeah, love it. What's the story behind the snowflake?
Well, it's interesting. In a former life, I was a ski instructor here in Australia and overseas in Austria. So love the snow. You'll see me at the snow most of the weekends through winter. I'm heading across overseas in a couple of weeks. So I'm a bit of a snow sports addict. And when I went to open my own business, I thought, this is amazing. Am I going to have a mountain as my logo? Am I going to have a snowflake? Am I going to have a ski? I wanted something that was going to really, be a symbol of myself. And then I'm thinking, a snowflake. Okay, snowflake sounds good, but what's it got to do with strengths, and what's it got to do with Prism? Well, I was naming the company. So I do have a story. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the middle of a snowflake is a hexagonal prism. Okay, now that hexagonal prism needs to be really strong for the individual facets of the snowflake to grow. So the right climate, the right temperature, and then those individual facets of the snowflake will grow. And as we know, every snowflake is different. So the way I brought the synergy with Prism Performance was that at Prism Performance, what we do is we take people and show them what they're inherently good and talented at, and give them the right climate and temperature through their company to become really centered, and then they can grow into individual, imperfect but talented people. And I always like the story that that one snowflake is always different, but then a couple together, that they make a snowball. They can actually, they can disable, they can stop a nation. Sometimes, you've got some airports closed and they stop a nation with a big snowstorm. So. Yeah.
That sounds very dangerous.
That's where it came from. So I was really, so it's been going ever since, and just what it is.
And I remember initially you were going to be focusing on healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical industry because you knew it so well. And but it seems like you've branched out into all industries now.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like, obviously, I embarked on my own backyard to start business, and look, it was really received really well. And you made the question earlier about how did I start with each company. It's funny because I started with sales and marketing, but then it's like, excuse the pun, a snowball effect, in the sense that you start and then the next business hears about it and says, okay, I've heard that you've been doing that with that marketing team. Can we do it with you? Can we do it with, and then it just keeps snowballing or rippling through the companies, and more people want to be part of it. So in that sense, it's been really good.
So I would assume that, some of the coaches that we talk to who are just starting their own business, struggle. They're amazing coaches, but they struggle with sales and marketing. They struggle with selling themselves and with marketing their own business. So, I mean, obviously you've had experience in those, so that would have benefited you as a small business owner. But is there anything, what were your areas of challenge? And this is for the people who are listening, who are in your shoes and stepping out of corporate and thinking about starting their own companies.
Yeah. So going back to the fact that, yes, 70% of my work is probably pharmaceutical, healthcare, and then the rest is FMCG, real estate, financial services. I have shipping, so there's a whole lot of different transport, a whole lot of different areas. And that inherently, that just comes, through recommendations, through being up and doing, keynotes or conference facilitation. But when I started out, I'll be honest with you, business development, I've got woo and I've got communication, and business development is one of the things that I like least about my job. I love getting in front of the customer, but I also love, my flow is when I'm in front of a group of people and facilitating a workshop or working with a team and coaching them through a leadership coach or a selling coaching. So don't be fooled that just because I have woo and communication that I absolutely love getting out there and doing sales and marketing for my company. In fact, this the whole thing about New Year's resolutions is sort of going a little bit backseat right now, and I'm hearing a lot of noise around the word for the year. What word are you going to take? And my word this year is brave, because I actually feel that my sales and marketing needs to ramp up. So my advice to anyone starting out is just be yourself and pick one area and one product that you want to take out there. Don't try and do everything at once. My maximizer took over in the beginning, and I was trying to see as many people and do as much as I put. Oh yeah, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. And then our beautiful friend Dion once said, Elaine, what's your niche? And so I said, okay, my niche is leadership and training with corporate and medium to large companies that are healthcare and beyond, that look at sales and marketing and cross-functional teams. And so then I had where I was going. So pick your niche. I think that's important. And back yourself. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because some people can sell other people's services and products, but when it comes to selling their own, right?
That is it. Like, I had no problem in front of a customer selling a product. And I still have no problem in front of a team of people teaching them how to sell a product, But when you're trying to sell, and even with self-assurance in number 6, I still find it, it's a little bit, uncomfortable. So we're all human at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I'm most interested in understanding as we dig into the work that you're doing at Prism Performance is how you make it sticky. So I know, we're going to talk about the team workshops that you do and the leadership programs that you do and the strengths-based selling and all of those different programs that you do within, within the business. I'll be interested to know what happens after you leave there. Do you know what I mean? That what do you do? What do you put into place? How do you make sure that what you've done is going to have an afterlife, and that it's going to stay sticky and go someplace beyond the workshop itself?
I really feel that the important thing is to start at the beginning, and rather than, it's really important to understand, well, what happens after. But one of the things that I do with all of my clients is figure out, what are they trying to achieve? What does their end game look like? What does great look like for them? And what do they want to achieve for the end game? And we might not make it to that end game by the end of a number of workshops or one-on-one coaching sessions. So it's really important then, what do we fill that void with? And for me, I think there's a number of touch points that I have following workshops. We have email points. We have one-on-one coaching. I allow any of my clients to call at any time they feel that they need to have a question about something with a leadership conundrum, for example. So it's about having that open door policy to your clients to be able to say, you know what? it's okay that we've just finished the workshop 3 weeks ago, but if you've got someone that you've come across, I had a situation with one of my senior leaders, and we'd been working on a competency framework with one of his colleagues, and he had a question around what if we need to change it up halfway through, and where should we go with that, and he needs some help. And I think it's important to be there for small questions like that, because it can your clients can derail very easily from the road to that end game. So we've got to keep them on track. So that's that. I think having little bits of tidbits, quotes, things sending out via electronic direct mail. I think it's important not to be too over the top with EDMs. I think you have to really balance your marketing. And this year I've actually, you wouldn't believe it, sales and marketer. I spent the last 3 years being really just in front of the people, not doing a lot of sales and marketing at all. So for me, this year is around getting the marketing mix right, and making sure that, getting the funnel for customers right as well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of the success stories you've had with some of your clients, Elaine?
Well, I have to say that I've never ever had a situation where I haven't had people walk out of a workshop or finish a program feeling like they haven't achieved anything. And that's not because of me, that's because of them. And that's because of the engagement and the commitment that they give to the program. As long as we provide exciting and fun-filled content, the outcome for them will be positive. I have 2 examples. One was a team where there was it was an engagement issue. There was a number of different people that weren't engaged in the national team. We did a Q12 day dot. I worked with the leader to come up with. He wrote his story. I love leadership through stories. I think it's really important that every leader has a story to tell and a journey to take their people on. So we created a journey what his journey looked like over the next 18 months and how he was taking his team on that journey. Then it was about bringing the people on board. So we worked with the leader, and then we worked with the managers, and then we worked with the full team, and gave them development opportunities, created mentorships, all the things that they were missing, around development, around what is the I'm trying to think of the Q12 around the mission of the company. So
mission and purpose. Yep.
Mission and purpose. So it was around making sure that the senior leadership team communicated, and it was a coordinated approach. So he was at the center of all of this happening, but bringing down information from the exec team, helping I was helping him create the story, and then we were filling out with the strengths program. 6 months down the track, we hit from red into the orange from the Q12. We looked at where there were still holes, and we went out and he went out and he talked to his team about why there were still holes in this place. It was a real honest, open, frank conversation. And we came back and we worked on the areas. One of those was selling skills, and we went through a selling skills program and took the team through, and they went out feeling so much more confident and comfortable with their story to their customers. And then 18 months on, we had pretty much everyone in the green. So that was a really positive, impactful program. And just quickly, another team that I worked with that were a platform function. So they weren't a commercial business, but they were a platform function within a big corporation. And we put everyone up on the map, and we did our workshop. And once we looked at the team grid, they realized that they were very much in that strategic and executing area. And they really wanted to influence, and there was no influencing talents really at all in this team. And so we looked at ways they could actually go out and influence without authority. How can they be seen, and how can they show people the good work they're doing when that's not what they're really comfortable with doing? So we started to put into, how do you dial up your woo? Even though you haven't got it, what do you want to do? So they started inviting people into their departments. They had morning teas every month to say, open day here, come and see what we're doing. And so they started to evolve and become a lot more open with the rest of the business. So they're two examples that come to top of mind at this point in time.
Yeah, excellent. I like you were talking before the show about the three pillars of that you talk about with leaders, and touching on sort of everyday leadership and coaching, and that you know, can you talk a little bit about that and how you use that three pillar concept with your leaders?
Yeah, look, I work with leaders from first line managers right through to CEOs of companies. And so, but it's the same thing every time. I utilize this framework, and it's around, there's three things when it comes to being a good leader or a good manager. There's the everyday stuff, managing. So it's, the KPIs, the reports, the making sure that all the finances are in check. It's making sure that we get all everything done. Then there's the leadership. So the leadership is about the journey or the story. And then we have coaching. So management, leadership, and coaching. And I ask my clients and I say, how much time do you spend in each area? And without a doubt, on most times I'll get 70% management, 20% leadership, 10% coaching. And I go, okay, well, what should it look like? And that's when people start to reflect and go, yeah, right, I get it. I'm not spending enough time coaching my people. Regardless of how senior someone is that reports into you, they still need guidance and they still need development. Everyone needs it to develop. So it's about how do we create, how do we shift the needle or shift that sort of weight of, let's get rid of this everyday headache stuff. Let's do less of that. Delegate it if you can. And now let's put more effort into leadership. So what's your story? What's your platform? What are you going to work with your people to take them on that journey? And then the third thing is, how is your conversation on development going? Is it something that you wait for your yearly review? Half the time in the old school corporations, that's how it was. I think it's changing now, but it should be a weekly, it should be just in every part of conversation. And strengths give people or give leaders the key to have that coaching development conversation. That's why I love it so much, because it gives them something that they can actually use, and it's a common language, and they go, oh yeah, I get it. Like, for example, if a leader's trying to get someone to become more vocal within a board meeting, because we know that's a lot of people there with deliberative that might sit back and go, or they might have input or analytical, and they're just sitting there and looking and thinking, and their manager knows they've got great stuff to tell. And so it's about, well, let's talk about the next meeting. Let's dial down that deliberative, and let's be a little bit more, dial up your communication a little bit more. Let's hear what you've got to say, because what you've got to say is valuable. And so that takes the permission of a development conversation. It gives permission for a development conversation to take place.
Yeah, interesting.
Sense?
So is there talk a little bit more, if you would, about some of the work you do. I mean, I know you do leadership programs and team workshops and selling with strengths and sales coaching through strengths. Touch on a bit of that.
Yeah. Okay. So with if you think about team workshops, leadership teams, I think everyone pretty much does their own version of pretty much the same in different ways. Everyone uses different frameworks, but it's all pretty much the same. But one of the things that I found over the last 3 years, was I'm more from being a strengths facilitator, leadership consultant, into, there was a big need in that sales area. So for selling, we're all given, most companies, for example, most companies, I shouldn't say every company, most companies have a sales framework, and they're all different, but they're all the same, really. So there's usually opening the call, asking the right questions, telling them what you've got, finding out what they don't like, and then trying to fix that, and then closing the call. Okay. So when you look at that, everyone gives, every corporation gives their people the framework and go, right, go and sell. Now, not everyone fits into that framework, right? So a lot of times I feel that corporations try to push their people into a sales framework rather than making the sales framework fit the individual. So what do I mean by that? For example, if you had someone that has high input, high learner, and they're a salesperson, what we would be showing them is that your expertise is in the asking questions part of the call. So that is where you are going to make the most impact with all the information that you're going to take. Okay, so use that to be the best, use that to get the best possible outcome for your sales call. And then, you know, it works on the flip side as well. So in the sense of, okay, so you've got input and you've got learner. You're going to be asking lots of questions and you might ask too many questions. So let's be really mindful of that. When is enough questions enough for you to go on and show what your product can do for the customer? When do you have to draw that line where you don't need to keep asking more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a sort of that's how I found that sales individuals could benefit from strengths, because they, for themselves in the sales framework. And then there's a second chapter, and that is around when they're in front of their customer. So it's a little bit like situational selling in the sense, but with a strengths lens on it. When I work with my sales colleagues, we look at, okay, what are your strengths? So just say, for example, me sitting in that whole influencing space, communication, positivity, activator. If I didn't know any less when I was a young girl out in front of a customer, I might have spoken too much and jumped in a bit too much. And that was just the nature of the way I sold. But now I have the knowledge of how it can work for me and work against me. So, so I talk about, okay, so when you're going in front of a customer, what domain do they come under? So maybe they're strategic. You don't necessarily know your customers' top 5, but we can guess a lot of the time, if we know them well enough, what domains they come under. So if we've got a strategic thinking customer that wants the analytics and wants all the information, and you go in there with all the relator, how you're going, you know there's going to be a disconnect and it's not going to work out well. So it's about that pre-call planning and bringing strengths into the pre-call plan.
Yeah, interesting. How much of your work is independent, like, you know, one-on-one coaching versus doing workshops and that sort of thing? I mean,
yeah. So I was thinking about that the other day. Someone asked me, and I think 60% is workshops, about 25%, 20% is one-on-one, and then the rest is keynote and facilitate conference chairing.
yeah. And when you do one-on-one coaching, how do you, you know, I have a lot of people who get certified who then say, you know, how many coaching sessions should I be selling my clients, you know, that sort of thing. How do you determine the needs of the client, and what does that process look like? If you don't mind being very granular about, you take on a new client, you know, how do you engage with them? How do you know what they need? How do you you know, how do you create sort of where you're going with them?
Yeah. It all comes down to the initial pre-brief, in the sense of where you sit down and say, what do you want to achieve? Some people just want to have a one-off workshop. I just want to have this workshop and I want to get the team started. We want to get a team charter together. We want to find out what our attitudes, behaviors, and what we're going to do. So that's fine. If that's what they want, that's what they need. And that's what I'm going to help them deliver. However, then once they've done the workshop, a lot of the time they see the benefit then of looking at one-on-one coaching, where they can now go into the individual strengths of each individual in the team. I'm talking about leadership here. Usually it's leadership one-on-one that I do. Sometimes I'll do one-on-ones with the individual contributors. But it's that helping them understand that a workshop's great and it's fantastic to do because you're going to learn a lot, but then being able to have the expertise of a Gallup coach uncover things that you not necessarily would know or would see is really important. And I'll give them examples around theme insights, like putting two themes together. I'll give them examples around pairing up. And I also give them the examples around, the competency framework. You really need someone to talk that through with. And having an accredited coach is important. So I usually, to be honest with you, would suggest 4 coaching sessions after a workshop with the leader. And they usually incorporate looking at the individual strengths of each of their team members. And we do say 2 in a 2-hour session, 2 people in each session. And how then the leader can put into place a really good action plan for that person, depending on what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. How do you measure the impact of the work that you've done with your clients?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I probably don't measure enough. What I used to do Survey Monkeys in the very beginning, and then I just found that I was not getting value for it, and some people weren't filling it out. And then I thought, okay, well, what do I do now? How do I measure? Because I need that. I have significance in my top 10. So how do I know I'm making a difference? I do it by checking back in with my clients and saying, what have you done? Where are you going? I never finish a workshop without an action plan. So everyone, not just the leader, but every person in that team has their own action plan aligned to their strengths. And so we check in and say, okay, who's done what? And it's about keeping people accountable. So if I feel that they're keeping accountable to their action items, that to me is a good measure of success.
Yep. Yeah. Very good. Talk to me a little bit about the analogies that you use. I know you've got a couple of strengths analogies that you use in your work that I think are good. And I'd love to hear about them.
Oh, okay. So I do have a few. I am a bit of a storyteller, so my communication comes out a bit. And so my first one is around the ocean. So obviously we're here on the east coast of Australia, and I love the beach. I live on the beach here at Newport. And a couple of years ago, I did my bronze medallion and became a surf lifesaver. So I thought about it, and I looked at one of the analogies that I could use, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. So I've got a picture. So this is what I show my can you see that? Okay. So
lift it up a little bit, just a little bit. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So what I do is I talk to my people, my strengths community and my clients about the RIP. And so a lot of people don't know what a RIP is. And Jim, can you see the RIP?
Yeah, I can indeed.
Yeah. Do you know how rips form?
It's the water. That's the cycles of the water going back out. They create channels. As the water comes in, it's got to go out somewhere. And so it comes together and pushes its way out.
Yeah, that is amazing. And guess what? So many Australians don't know that, believe it or not. And so I give them a little 101 on what the RIP is all about. And I talk about, okay, so people come down and see the nice flat water, and they run in there and they think, oh, this is the place to be. And then when they get caught in the RIP, they get pulled out to sea. Okay, what happens when people get caught in a RIP? They panic and they turn around and they actually swim against the RIP. Where in actual fact, what they should be doing is going out with the flow, coming in on the side and back in on the waves. So the way I say this from what does that got to do with strengths is when you're using your strengths, go with the flow of the RIP. Go out the back, and if you feel that you need help, put your hand up, ask someone else to come and partner with you. But if you feel that you can use the flow of the waves and use your strengths to come back into shore, do that. So it's a little bit of a story that I like to tell, because not only does it put into people the mind of, okay, let's go with the flow of our strengths, not push against it and make it hard work and exhausting. I always say that rips don't drown us, exhaustion does. And it's the same when it comes to working against what you're not good at. It's tiring and it's exhausting and it's not fun. So, we get it as coaches totally, but it's a real eye-opener, and it's a good message for people to sort of see that image, and they get the gist of it then.
Yeah, that's excellent. I like it.
And for those that don't know, white is nice. So white is nice and green is mean. So for those that have got kids that want to teach them not to go near the RIP, that's what you need to tell them.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Excellent. And what's the other one that you use
I've got
around
a
the skiing
couple.
one? I think.
I have got a skiing one. I actually was in Queenstown at a conference last year delivering a workshop, and I got up on the top of Coronet Peak and took a video about leadership in the fall line. So as a ski instructor, we were taught to ski the fall line.
What's a
So
fall line? I know what a rip
yeah,
is, but I don't know what a fall line is.
yeah, it's really, the fall line is it's not something that many people know about. So if I got a mountain and I'm looking down that mountain and I roll a ball, the way that ball rolls is the fall line. So sometimes people will look down a mountain and go, oh, there's the lift over there. I'm going to ski straight for the lift. However, the fall line goes straight down. Now, when you ski the fall line, it's easier, your turns are more rounded, and it's a more pleasant experience. When you ski across the fall line, it's a little bit hard, it's a bit awkward, but people see their target and they'll go across the fall line because they don't know what a fall line is. So I talk about skiing now since and I go with friends and they go, Elaine, can we follow you? And I go, why do you want to follow me? You always want to follow. Why am I always in front? And they go, you pick the right line, Elaine. It's really easy to ski behind you. And that's just because it's something that I was brought up with. When I was a ski instructor, we had to ski most of the time the fall line. So I put that and cross that. I bring that analogy to my leaders and say, look, when you're actually leading, make sure you take the easiest possible line of resistance. So if you've got a team of high communicators, don't expect them to be analytical in their thinking and don't make them do things that they're not necessarily good at. Make their path or create their fall line for them and lead them in that fall line to make it as easy as possible and make it as enjoyable as possible. So there's a
Very interesting.
couple of little stories for you.
I like those. That's excellent. And I know the other thing that I'm particularly interested in is the women in leadership forums and that sort of thing that you've been doing. Talk a little bit about that work.
Hey, isn't women in leadership a bit of a buzz at the moment? It's almost like my husband says, "What about men in leadership?" I go, "That's okay." I think it's important because I've been to a lot of women in leadership forums over the last number of years, even when I was at Pfizer, and it's so good to see men are part of that journey and take a lot of responsibility in that women in leadership. So I don't know. I sort of fell into this place of talking in front of different industry bodies of senior leaders, mainly women, and talking about strengths. And so it's around self-based leadership and leadership of others. And I really pitched it around, okay, ladies and gentlemen, you say you want to be good leaders, but are you really working towards what you're inherently talented at? And when we talk about each individual at these conferences wanting to have a leadership journey, they all have their own journey. They all have their own goals. However, I always bring up the statistics in Australia that 25% of C-suite positions, so corner office positions, belong to, or CEOs, they belong to 25%. So in Australia, only 25% of women are in these positions. However, 45% of women in Australia aspire to be in these positions. So there's a 20% gap. And we say, well, what's that gap a result of? And you know what? There's so many different things that can contribute to that. It might be the part-time workforce. It might be taking leave. It might be having a baby. There's so many different things. But I give my women in leadership forums a strengths lens to look through. And I show them where self-assurance comes up for women. And for those that would all know that the 34th talent across the population for women is self-assurance. So we ain't really good at it. And yeah, it's low for men too. However, men have strategic in their top 5 and women have empathy. So that combination of self-assurance being really low and empathy being really high, I showed them how this can equate into potentially saying, I'm not going to go for that role when the guy next in the office next door will definitely say, I'm going for that role. It's all mine. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole women need to know 90% that stuff, because it's not about that. It's around, I think it's around being able to show women, back yourself, find that inner mentor, dial up your self-assurance, and potentially dial down your empathy, dial a little bit more command up, and get out there and go for those roles. So that's the message that I take. And, you know, a lot of the time you'll find that the women that are in those C-suites, they're the ones that have done that. They're the ones that have gone out on a limb. They're the ones that have taken the risk. And if it doesn't work out, they go, at least I tried.
Excellent. So, Elaine, when you think about the last 4 years in Prism Performance, what would you say has been the biggest surprise that you've had in going from your corporate to starting your own business?
Oh, biggest surprise. Well, I could probably talk about one of my basements. So I went out. This is a funny story. So I went out as my new business. I was on my own. I've got a team now, which is nice. So I'm not my woo is sort of fulfilled during the day that I have people to talk to. But I started out, and and I was out there looking at business development, and I'd go out to see a new client, and I'd show them my flyer and what I was doing in my presentation, and then I'd go and home, and they'd say, send me a proposal. I'd go home and say to my husband, I got a new client today, darling. And it was like my positivity was just totally in the basement, in the sense that I was so naive, thinking that every time someone wanted a proposal sent to them, that, you know, maybe that was a new customer. Since then, I've become a little bit more worldly about it all. But what did you ask me? It was more about what shocked me, or?
Well, I asked about what was the biggest surprise, but I think I also wanted to know sort of what, what the challenges were that you experienced. What were some of the learnings that you've had? So, any of those would be, I think, great to hear.
One of the things I find that one of the biggest learns for me was how difficult it was for people to actually verbalize their top 5. So I always get my workshop participants or my coachees to read their insights guide before I go into a session. And then we talk about what strengths are all about and how it plays out. And we do a little bit of activity. We do speed dating, the whole bit. And then it gets to the time I go, okay, you've just finished your strengths session. You've walked out into the elevator, and your general manager has gotten in the lift with you and said, tell me, I heard you were at that strengths workshop. Tell me about your strengths. And I go, what would you say? And they all sit there just going, I have no idea. And for me, having communication and activator, and I can just speak it. So it was really important for me to understand that it wasn't easy for people. So I really give people time in my sessions, or whether it be in the workshop or one-on-one, to create that individual testimonial, that strengths statement that they can relate to. So that was a big learn. And I think that that's a really important thing to get right before you can move on, because if they don't, claim it themselves, you can't aim it. So, that was something that I found was a really, not a big surprise, but it's something that I've really been concentrating on. And because I have that storytelling almost talent, I can help them with their trying to get the words onto paper as well.
Yeah, excellent. So let's take you out of the take your professional hat off for a moment and look at the personal side of Elaine Krek. Do you use strengths at home with your family?
Absolutely. It didn't happen straight up. I do know that when I first got accredited, it was like, okay, baby steps here, because I was all going out there going, this is amazing, this is incredible. But one of the interesting things that we have at home is we've put all our strengths on the map. There's 4 of us, my husband and my 2 girls, and we've mapped our talents up on the grid, and it's on the fridge. And it's really interesting because it's really helped us all understand why we are the way we are. And you know what? They say plumbers' taps always drip. it was like interesting that you never would think to do that. And it wasn't only until about a year and a half ago that I actually plotted it on the grid, and it's been great because we have newfound respect for one another, and understanding on why we are the way we are. So yeah, it's been really good. I think from a personal perspective in the community, my strengths have really helped me. We moved about 3 years ago. We did a sea change. So we moved out of our community where we were 16 years into a new community. And I was like, okay, so what do I do this weekend? The kids had grown up, the sports, the weekend sport had sort of dissipated, and I was straight down to that surf club, and I had my whole new tribe of around me. So that's my woo and my communication and my maximizer working. I think in my personal life that's helped me as well.
Yeah, excellent. Very good. Jim, do you have any questions or anyone from the chat room?
Yeah, Chris Townsend out in the chat room had said back to some you were giving as advice to leaders, and sometimes we hear from community in the strengths community, hey, I've got Relator and Analytical and some of those others, and I'm not good at I'm not good at selling because I'm quiet or whatever. What kind of advice do you give for folks who maybe are struggling in that area? What kind of advice do you give them when you talked about the riptide and you talked about skiing, but when there's maybe some misconceptions about those themes, what do you do to work through that with those individuals?
So are you saying that if you're a coach and you're trying to sell your business?
Or no, for a coach, maybe you have a coach listening who is, they have felt like they're not a very good salesperson, but they're, because they're Relator. I have Relator. I'm not good. I don't have the woo. By the way, there's dangers in this woo that you and I have.
Oh yeah. Don't we know it, Jim? Don't we know it?
Yeah. So be careful what you wish for. What kind of advice would you give to someone who maybe has those quiet thinking themes or those relational themes where they're not comfortable just going out and cold calling?
Yeah. So for one, I feel that I can't cold call myself because I have Relator up in my, I think it's number 11. But I think the important thing is with woo, people say, oh, I wish I had your woo. And I go, yes, sometimes you don't, but I feel that Relator is a really, really great talent to have because you can really sit one-on-one with an individual. It might take a little bit more time. For me, I can get up in front of 100 people and might get 2 or 3 callbacks. It might, once you're doing one-on-one, you find out more about that person. You can potentially look at creating some outcomes or some ideas for them that are totally, what's the word? Almost customized to them. What's he saying?
Oh, no. So Kristen, also in the chat room, we were talking about woo. She just said, by the way, my woo makes me a horrible person to be sold to. I'm trying to win the sales guy or gal over, and it screws up the whole power dynamic. Right? This kind of I'm not good to be sold to. In fact, sometimes I just punt on that.
And I think having, like, for example, I will be in a workshop with, and we all know this, but I'll be in a workshop with a bunch of salespeople, and I'll have someone that's got no relationship in their top 5, and they go, or a leader, I've got no relationship, and they go, oh my God, I'm so bad at what I do, I can't do this. I go, and we all know that. You know what? Not necessarily. And then it's about showing them, and it's the same for coaches, right? Look at what we've got in our top 5 and use that to sell. I believe that we can sell with any strength that we have. It doesn't have to be woo. It could be restorative. Tell me about your pain points at the moment. What are you finding issues with your team? What are you trying to achieve? And so then that's how you sell to that type of person.
Chris had mentioned in the chat room, he's been part of an organization where he sold with restorative, and he did that by picking up accounts that were broken for the company and restoring them, right? Fixing them.
Yeah.
We've all had those where it didn't go right, or, there's nobody calls them back. Nobody wants to call that customer back. And there's this opportunity, even with restorative, right? This is that riptide effect, right? This is seeing what kind of opportunities are out there and then swimming towards those or swimming with them as opposed to fighting, that work or to using it. You said something early that, and I'll just make this comment and then Ann, we're going to run out of time here. It's too bad we can't go for 2 hours, but people would struggle to listen that long. One of the things, Elaine, that you said that made me think, like, I am way better at selling for someone else than I am for selling for me. Like, this is what makes Call to Coach Theme Thursday so powerful, is that this is not for me. This is about other people. And so I'll talk about it all day long. I think sometimes the power of partnerships and selling can be really, really powerful, and that you find someone who sells for you and then you sell for them, or in a group where you're selling for each other. I think if you can make that work contractually, and the money, that's the hard part, right? The money always messes things up. But I think, I don't know, I think in that experience of find someone else you can sell for and have them sell for you. And so that you're not selling yourself, you're making somebody else a big deal.
Exactly.
I don't know, respond to that.
I've been in some partnerships with some Aussie colleagues, and sure, you work through the finance as long as you're really open and honest about the outcomes, and if everyone's happy with what the financial position is. Yep, definitely. And the other thing is, if you're not happy with getting out there in front of people, and this is something that I need to be brave about this year, is that whole online, that whole sort of presence on social media, and how we can make that funnel our customer base. That's my big place this year.
Now, lots of good opportunities for that. That's an area, by the way, I found podcasting for me, creating these audio presentations. I'm not a writer. I like to talk. And so getting on there and talking about this put me in an area of influence. And I think there's just not enough people taking advantage of this thing we call podcasting or webcasting, whatever you want to call it. So I think that opportunity is out there as well for people to take. And unfortunately, we need to wrap it up. So I'll throw it back to you, and let's thank our guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Elaine. And is it just final words? Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important to mention as we close?
Not really. I think I just think we're all also blessed to have such a wonderful framework and all of the great resources that Gallup give us to be able to provide our customers and our strengths communities. And I'm just excited. I'm really excited. We hit the 20 mil just late last year, and the more and more people that are getting on the strengths community, the more I can see it creating a wave here in Australia, and people are seeking us out as coaches rather than us having to go to them, which is a great thing to happen as well. So, and I really want to thank you for having me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming along, Elaine, and happy 2019. Jim, back to you.
Elaine, thanks for sitting in front of the bridge. It just makes me want to be in Australia even more. We spent a bunch of time in the pre-show getting the light right, and then I didn't even turn my own light on. We were in here. I was like, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we webcasted, and I was hoping I got through all the steps, and then I was like, I forgot to turn. So that even happens here as well. Elaine, thanks for the great advice. I think a great way in 2019 to start the year. You mentioned Australia and just all the work that you guys are doing. We see that, by the way. We sense that. Australia is on fire, and I've said that to you several times on these webcasts. And so I don't know what you guys are eating over there or what's going on, but it's we can feel
Vegemite.
There you go. We can feel the presence of what's going on in Australia, and I think we have a lot to learn from you guys. And I also am excited about kind of a coaching focused success story, getting your coaching business rolling story here in the very beginning of 2019. So Elaine, thanks for coming in and doing that. You guys both hang tight for 1 second. Let me wrap this up. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center. Just gallupstrengthcenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. If you like to be a guest blogger, if you like to write, I mentioned I'm not a great writer, but maybe many of you are. If you'd like to write and you've got something to say, we are accepting those stories that you want to send in to us. Send them in an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones. They're available on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Actually, by the time you listen to this, we should have a brand new Call to Coach menu in there for you as well, where you can search for all the Call to Coach episodes and all by the guests and some of the hosts and some of those things. So You might want to go out and check that out, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, we mentioned that. You can see a list of all our courses that lead to that certification, courses.gallup.com. And anything you want to highlight there going on in Sydney as far as training?
We have our first course of 2019, I think, is happening in the, gosh, I don't want to get the dates wrong, so maybe I won't say it. Go online and check the diary there, and you'll see it. But
they train right there in the office, right? Looking at that view that's out there.
Looking at that view.
I'm right now I'm scheduling my own training there in Sydney, so that maybe give me a good excuse to get out to Sydney.
Come on over.
Yeah, it'll be good. Want to remind you to join us on our Facebook group. We have a Gallup Webcast group that's out there. If you just go out to facebook.com/group/called2 coach. Many of you joined over the holidays when you heard me say that on the webcast, and so you can join us out there. Almost 12,000 of you out there, and some great conversation on that as well. We are looking forward to exciting 2019. A lot of great webcasts coming this year. A lot of things lined up for you. Subscribe to the channels, whether you do that on YouTube or on Spreaker or in your app on your phone. Both Android and iPhone have dedicated podcast apps now. Get subscribed to us so you don't miss one of these. They'll just drop in the next time you're listening to it. We'd love to have you do that. We'd love to have you join us live. If you go to gallup.eventbrite.com, that'll get you there as well. Look forward to the next one of these. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.